finding out how much time I have. Okay, so I'm a professor of neuroscience. I study perception. I want to tell you why the brain is the biggest barrier to digital, all right? And why we study perception, because perception underpins everything that you think, you believe, you know, your dreams, the clothes you wear, the people you fall in love with. Everything begins with perception. All of you are in one way or another touching perception, right? So to understand perception is not only to understand how the brain works, it's actually to understand what it is to be human, right? So how many of you woke up this morning and thought you saw the world as it really is? One literalist. What are you seeing if not the world as it really is? Sorry? A version of reality. So is it accurate? So I think you all think you see the world as it really is because you all believe in illusions. To see an illusion is to see the world differently than the way you think it really is meant to be. All right? So let's see how good you are at seeing reality. How many can see the predators about to jump out at you? And if you haven't seen it yet, you're dead. Right? Especially here. Who thinks they can see it? Anyone? Okay, let's just add 90% of the information your brain uses to see comes from grayscale. Let's just add 10% of the information. Can you see it now? Yes? So you can see if I go back, it was always there. Okay? For those who maybe shouldn't be here, there it is. Okay? Right? Now, maybe in terms of lightness, we see the world as it really is, right? The simplest thing your brain sees is lightness. Even jellyfish see lightness, and they don't even have a brain, okay? So these two dots are physically different, and they look different, right? So it seems at this level, we're seeing the world as it really is, which means if we put two dots up there that are physically the same, they look the same, right? So things that are the same should look the same. Things that are different should look different. But what if we don't change those dots at all? We just change what surrounds them. All right? So the dots themselves have not physically changed. And almost all of you will probably see the one on the left looking lighter than the one on the right. Agreed? This is the simplest illusion that your brain does, and it demonstrates that when it comes to perception, in fact, when it comes to anything the brain does, context is everything. Okay? Your brain did not evolve to see the world in absolute terms. In fact, it can't. Right? The first thing your brain does is it looks at relationships, okay? So a far more interesting question is not that context is everything. It's why it's everything. And again, to understand this is to understand who we are and why the brain is, in fact, the biggest barrier to digital, okay? So the answer comes to this. I won't go into the details, but if you remember anything, remember this point. Information is meaningless, right? There is no inherent value in any piece of data. This is true even at the level of your senses. The light that your eyes receive is completely ambiguous because it could literally mean anything. It could be a dark object on a bright light or a bright object on a dark light. It could be a loud stimulus far away or a quiet stimulus up close. Your brain has no physical access to the real world. The only information it gets is its senses. But your senses conflate multiple things about the world, so that information is literally meaningless, right? Because it could mean anything. So how does your brain make meaning? What's the other piece of information your brain has to see, other than the immediate information, the immediate data? Associations with what? Previous experience, right? The functional structure of your brain is literally a physical manifestation of the history of your interaction with the world, okay? And it's of a particular type of interaction, right? It's physically engaging with the world, not passively receiving content, but actively engaging with it. And to make the point, I'll tell you a story about someone called Marion Diamond who did these amazing experiments back in Berkeley in the 1970s, where she raised rats in two different kinds of environments. One in a deprived environment, very few toys, very few other rats, very low social interaction. The other rats in a highly social environment. She then looked at the cells in the cortex of the rats where we do our thinking and found that the cells in the enriched environment were highly grown, right? Whereas the ones in the deprived environment had atrophied. So your brain evolved to match the complexity of its world by physically interacting with it. Okay? And I want to show you how quickly your brain can redefine normality by simply looking at the dot between the green and the red squares. Right? It's a bit bright in here, but let's try it. And I want you to look at it. We're going to look at it for about 20 seconds. Don't look anywhere else. And while you're staring at it, I'll tell you what's happening inside your brain. Your brain is learning. It's learning that the left side of its visual field is under green light, and the right side of its visual field is under red light. That's becoming its new reality, which means everything you see after this will be a consequence of that experience. You're also getting very sleepy. Right? Keep looking. Don't look anywhere else. When I tell you to, I want you to look at the dot between the desert scenes, okay? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Look there. Do they look the same? No? For 7% of the men in here, they will because you're colorblind. Okay? So, when you open your eyes, what do you see? You can't see the world as it really is because you're forever separate from it. You can't see the information that falls onto your eye because that would be meaningless, because it could mean anything. Data does not come with instructions. So when you open your eyes, what you're actually seeing is something very simple. You're seeing a meaning grounded in your history, a meaning that was useful to see in the past based on your physical interaction with the world. Okay? And what I give you a sense of what I mean by seeing meaning, we're going to do a little exercise. I want you to read what you see. I'm going to show you some slides. We'll do it all together, okay? So read what you see. 1, 2, 3. Very good. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, some of you. All right, 1, 2, 3. Now remember the instructions. I said read what you see. You all failed. There are no words there. That literally says, "What are reading?" Right? There's no law of physics that tells you you have to put an H between the W and A. But why do you do so? Because your brain has encoded the statistics of co-occurring letters in English and other languages. So when you're presented with that context, your brain puts an H there. Why? Because it was useful to do so in the past. Okay? This is true even at the level, oh, notice none of you read What You Dreaming. Right? Why? Because I had you reading. That was your recent experience. So you read the words in that way. Now this is true even at the level of seeing color. So this illusion I made about 10 years ago, you'll notice that you have a bright orange tile at the side and a dark brown tile at the top. That is your physical reality. But what is your perception? That's your perceptual reality. But what's the physical reality? If we mask off the rest of the scene, you can see that the two tiles are physically the same. So that's your perceptual reality, and that's your physical reality. Okay? What's true for color is also true for form. These two tables are the same. Agreed? No. The red table is simply the green table on its side. Right? The height of the green is the same as the width of the red, and the width of the green is the same as the height of the red. Okay? All that varies is the angles at the corner. You're not seeing the information. You're seeing the meaning of the information based on your history of experience. And what's true for color and object is also true for our perception of other people. In fact, perceptions of ourselves. We have no access to other people. We perceive a projection of their meaning based on our interaction. And I'll make this point with a simple critter here. Do we have sound?
Nice day today. I think I might, was it Alan? Alan! Al! Alan! Yeah, I don't think you can hear me, you know. Yeah. Alan! 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 Al! Alan! 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 Oh, that's not Alan. Steve, that's Steve. Steve! 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 Oh, no, that's not Steve. That is Alan. Alan! Alan! Al!
I swear you can see him thinking, right? So what this means is that when it comes to perception, which underpins everything that we know, we are just like this frog, okay? And I don't mean metaphorically. I mean we are literally like this frog, all right? This is VR for a frog. We are so like that frog, right? So life is actually really basic. It's not simple, it's basic. When you're walking through life, you're constantly making decisions every moment of every day, right? And at any point in time, your brain is only ever making one decision. It seems more complicated than that, it's not, right? Your brain is only ever making a decision of going towards something or away from something. That's all we're ever doing. But the point is that every decision you make, even the colors you see, are grounded in your assumptions, your biases, that come as a consequence of physically interacting with the world. Okay? Your biases and assumptions define who you are. In fact, everything you do has an assumption and a bias, which normally is good. Every time I take a step, I have assumptions about the floor is not going to give away, my legs aren't going to give away. They keep us alive. But sometimes what was once useful is no longer useful. Hence the need to be able to see differently, to be creative, right? Nothing new begins with knowing. The only way to ever see differently is by challenging your assumptions. All revolutions begin with a joke. They begin with a question. They begin with doubt, right? We need to celebrate doubt, okay? So what happens inside your brain when you ask a question? This is what we call your space of possibility. These are what the attractor states, the activation states inside your head. If you're at the red circle, not everything is possible. Some things are more likely than others. And we can represent them as larger circles closer to the center. Those are your most likely next steps. And that space is defined by your biases. If the best solution is that green dot at the top, you can't get there. Your brain doesn't do big jumps. It only does small steps. The only way to get that green dot next to the red one is by changing the space of possibility. How you do that? By questioning your biases. Okay? And I want to show you how simple this is, even at the level of seeing motion. Most of you will see this spinning from left to right. Yes? That's because you all have a bias that you're looking down on that central plane. I want you to question that assumption and look up at it. And at some point, it'll flip and go in the opposite direction. And if you blur your eyes, blink, look around it, you can get it to flip. How many can get it to flip? If I say it's an IQ test, yes, I can do it. All right? And every time you blink, it's going to go in the opposite direction. I'm not doing anything. It's happening inside your head. You're just changing your assumptions. Now, which direction is it actually rotating? How many say left to right? How many say right to left? How many say, I don't care? Right? What if I tell you there's no motion on the screen at all? Nothing is moving. Would you believe me? It's an animation. You're seeing a series of still images that are slightly different from each other. Your brain takes that small difference and perceives it as fine motion, right? If I were to make those differences larger, you would see flickering. So your brain is taking a series of still images, perceiving it to move, and then flipping it from one direction to the other, depending on how you think about it. Okay? Now, the problem with seeing differently is that almost all of our assumptions are blind to us. We don't actually know why we do what we do, which is why marketing doesn't work so well. People give you aspirational reasons. They give you reasons, but they're not necessarily the reasons why they actually did it. And I'll give you an example, because I'm going to read all your minds right now. Okay? I'm going to give you two shapes. These aren't circles, diamonds, or triangles. They have no name. They're just abstract shapes. Agreed? Okay? I'm going to give you two words. Kiki, which has no meaning, and boo-boo, which also has no meaning. Now, you independent, free-thinking people, which of these shapes, which has no name, is Kiki, and which of these shapes, which also has no name, is boo-boo? Right? How many say that one's Kiki, and that one's boo-boo? Right? Do you know why? It's because your brain has the assumption of pain, right? I won't go into the details, but if I give you the word love and the word hate, and if I say hate and I prick your finger, I activate the same part of your brain. And almost all of you will say that one's love, yes? And that one's hate, depending on the state of your relationship. Okay? Which is why creativity begins with not knowing. It begins with humility. Okay? So, if we are frogs, right? What makes the human mind beautiful? Now, the answer might be a bit surprising. It's that we're delusional, right? That's what makes the human mind beautiful. I'm going to give you an example. I want you to tell me if you can hear any words in this sound string, okay? Can you hear any words? Anyone think they can hear some words? Sound? You can hear one. Oh, interesting. See me later. Okay. Try again. Can you hear anything? What do you hear? Marijuana. Okay? Let's try, in this group, not surprisingly, marijuana. In fact, read along. Right? Can you hear it now? Are you getting better at hearing it? Yes? No? Yes? Notice you're getting better at hearing something that doesn't actually exist. Those words do not exist in that sound string. You're being delusional, and you're getting better at it. All right? What I mean is that the brain has this amazing ability to imagine. What does it sound? It's this played backwards.
Another one bites the dust. Another one bites the dust. Ow! Another one bites the dust.
Okay.
Hey, hey!
So imagination is, of course, at the beginning of seeing differently. That's what enables us to what I call seeing yourself see. When I showed you an illusion, that was your perceptual reality. As soon as I showed you the reality of that illusion, the physical reality, your brain was doing something remarkable. You were holding two possibilities that are mutually exclusive at the same time. You were seeing one reality, but knowing another, right? That ability to know the present but imagine tomorrow is the beginning of being able to see differently, to ask questions, to doubt. The most dangerous thing your brain can do is to say why, okay? So, to wrap up a bit, what you see, your perceptions, are nothing other than a history of your past perceptions. It's not a history of what something turned out to be. It's not a history of the data. It's a history of your past meanings of interacting with the world, right? Which means everything you're doing right now is simply a response, a reflex response grounded in your history. You have no free will in what you're doing in the moment, right? So where does free will live? Free will doesn't live in the moment. It lives in the future. Because if what I see is a narrative, a story of my history, then the only way to see differently is by changing my history, right? By imagining a different meaning associated with information that happened in the past. That changes my history of my story, which changes what I will do in the future when presented with something similar. I call it changing your future past. Okay? So, the beginning, of course, is to see yourself see. So who cares, right? Other than a neuroscientist, and how does this relate to digital? It's because your brain evolved to actively engage with the world. We create meaning through shared, truly shared, not passively received, not broadcast, but truly shared experiences, right? In the physical world with people we care about, okay? That's how your brain makes meaning, in content otherwise. This creates a fundamental challenge. How can digital be meaningful? And so our argument is that digital needs to live in what we call the space between. Okay? That's where your perception lives. It doesn't live in your brain, it doesn't live in the world, it lives in that interaction, that ecology, your environment and interaction with it. Right? So digital can augment that experience as opposed to replace it. Hence, I personally think the future is augmented reality, not necessarily virtual reality. So to test this, we actually created a platform for looking to see whether this would be meaningful, whether we can actually enhance the meaning of content, which we call traces. And the idea here is simply that you can take any piece of digital content and you can float it literally in the real world, right? And all the content is actually embedded within this augmented reality drop of water. So you get your phone out and you can see these drops of water floating all around you. And you can reach up and grab them. and then you can send them on. And when we did this, and also in the next iteration, the drops of water are going to follow you wherever you go. So everyone will have their own spirit following them, right? What's meaningful is that when we tested people on receiving, for instance, music in this way, right? Not only did it increase the self-rated happiness and compassion and empathy of the people doing the leaving, and also the people receiving the content, they felt closer to the person receiving it, but they actually perceived the song to be 20% better than if they just passively received it. Why? Because if your brain puts effort into something, it perceives that something to have a higher value. It's called the IKEA effect. It's true, for better or for worse, right? So I thought I'd just finish with that. Thank you very much. I hope that was useful.